All right, let me say all that all over again. I was basically saying it's great to be back, and it took me a little bit to kind of reset up the system again for a live stream. And as you can see, you couldn't hear me because I'm still kind of getting used to doing it again. It's been 2 months, and in a certain way, it feels like it hasn't really been that long. But when I think about it, it has been quite a while. 7 weeks, because we did 7 episodes, so it's been quite a while. And those episodes did amazing, and we had a lot of people in the chat too. I mean, nearly twice we had nearly 1,000 people, which is really, really amazing. Anyways, so for those of you that are new, I used to do this completely live. And it would be kind of like a call-in radio show, and whoever showed up could just join me in the Zoom. But what happened was that people would come in here and do all kinds of terrible things, and then I'd have to go back and re-edit the video. And it made it not fun anymore. So then I took a break, and then what I decided to do is just invite guests, because there's a lot of people that want to be on the show, and I'm not really quite sure if they're the perfect fit for an hour show. And I kind of, even though you never know, I feel like I have a pretty good handle on who would work and who doesn't work after 1,000 videos. So some of these people I will pull till Saturday night because it's a little bit more flexible. All right, so if in the description below, let's see what's there. There's a link to our website. There is a link to Discord. If you don't know what Discord is, Discord is kind of like Facebook, but different. There's rooms in there. I could best describe them as like being chat rooms, but not only you can type and do whatever you want there, you can actually video chat, you can voice chat, you can post memes, whatever. So it's super cool. And then there's different rooms in there. And it's totally free. All you have to do is go to Discord and sign up for a free profile. And then, do I have it in here? Because I went back and added it toward the last time that I didn't do it. Oh, the password's there. So if you see in the website, there's the password. So use the password, and that will get you into Discord. And there you have it. There's links to our podcast Facebook page. There's a link to my personal Facebook page, and you'll see that my last name is Reynolds and Mara is my beloved wife. So for those of you that are, and I still see in the chat from time to time, who's Mara? They, people think that that's my last name, and even sometimes the guests will think that's my last name, but that's who Mara is. She is the most important part of the podcast that you don't see. She does, she's the chief editor. Also in the description is a link that I need to change that. We have a second channel. It used to be called Jeff Mara NDE Clips, and what it was and what it is still is the same thing. I just put a new name on it. And but what it is it's an NDE only channel, and I trim out the beginning and I trim out the end. So you just get the guest NDE, which sometimes can be 3 or 4 minutes. Sometimes it can be 30 minutes. Just depends on the guest. But for those of you that love NDEs, that channel is for you. And I'm posting very often there. So if you know that you are, you know, if you just love NDEs and that's all you want to see, then go ahead and subscribe to that channel, because I'm posting videos in there very often. I have done over 700 NDE videos, so there's probably a lot there that you haven't seen. So that's what's going on there. And what's amazing is the audience that I have is so amazing, because quite often there's a comment there that's basically saying, hey, you're stealing these videos from Jeff Mara, and they don't realize it's me because you don't see me in the video at all. But if you go to the home page, I think it says something like Jeff Mara's NDE Journal. The name is there. So it's all there. And I just glanced down to Antoinetta, and in 5 days she meets Chris Bledsoe. So that is awesome. When you see him, please tell him hello for me and tell him to come back and visit me. I'd love to have him as a guest again. What else is there? So there's a music channel. I used to produce music. There's some stuff there. I put together one meditative like music, and eventually I'm going to probably put in more meditation like music. And maybe even I'm going to try to experiment with binaural beats and put some kind of binaural beat music in there as well. There's a merch store link, and there's another channel of ours, another old channel that is a cooking channel. We started posting in there again recently too. So it's healthy food. Well, most of it's healthy. Some of it's kind of junk food in there too. But it's just something different. And many of you guys may or may not know, I've been doing YouTube since even before Google acquired it. I mean, my history making YouTube videos goes way back. I mean, it goes back to 2006 with other channels, and we got super successful in children's and family channels. But our kids grew up, so I reinvented myself for this. All right, so let me tell you what else is going on here. My guests tonight are Anastasia and Samuel Chong. Both of them are previous guests. Anastasia is a woman who had an NDE during a dental procedure, and she came on and talked about that. She's super big on TikTok. And so she'll be here. Maybe we'll kind of have her tell a little bit of that story. And then she's, I guess, recently had a shared death experience. So we're going to talk about that. And then Samuel Chong is a Chinese translator. And he is really into this book called the Thiaoouba Prophecy. He even traveled to, I don't know where it was. I think it was Vietnam or Taiwan, somewhere. He went and even met with the author about this book. And it's all about, I guess, the author's UFO encounter and ET encounter and stuff. And he's actually translated the book into Chinese and Taiwan. And the book's been a bestseller in China and Taiwan, which is very rare. So he'll be back tonight to talk about the Thiaoouba Prophecy. And she will be here to tell us what's going on with her shared death experience. And usually I start with a guest at 7 o'clock, and it is 7:11. She said she's got to be here a few minutes late, which I think she's supposed to be here at 7:15. Looks like she's here now. Perfect timing. Let's bring her in. And what's really awesome is to see, I haven't seen people in a long time. Anastasia, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, great to see you again.
Yeah, you too. It's been a little while.
Yeah, when were you on? I don't even remember.
August of 22.
August, that's 2 years ago. Wow.
Yeah, time flies.
Wow, that's amazing. What have you been up to?
Well, I quit my corporate job. I went all in on a healing studio, and I've been doing healing work ever since. So I quit my corporate executive job, as a lot of NDEers do after they have those kinds of experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been just following that ever since.
Mm. Well, you look amazing. I think you've changed your hairstyle since the last time I've seen you.
Maybe a little longer. I
Maybe a
don't
little
know. It's
longer.
hair. I change
It's
all the
hair,
time.
yeah. Um, Well, since it's been 2 years, I mean it. I've probably gained about 80 or 90,000 subscribers since then.
Well, good
And
for you. That's fantastic.
thank you. Yeah. And so what I'm thinking about, if you don't mind, maybe you can give us like a brief story of your NDE before we get into your SDE, because there may be a lot of people here that haven't heard your story before.
Actually happened before my near-death
Oh,
experience,
okay.
but
Wow.
when my shared death experience happened, I had no idea what it was. I didn't have vocabulary for it. It wasn't actually until my near-death experience happened that I was able to connect those two experiences together and realize what had happened when I had the shared death experience with my mom.
Hmm.
So the NDE was actually after the
All
SDE.
right. Well, then let's go in chronological order.
Sure,
I think it'd be best to
sure.
start with that then.
So in 2011, my mother got incredibly and very unexpectedly sick. She went into the emergency room, and her condition declined very rapidly. I was actually visiting some friends down in Marietta, Georgia. And that's important because later on, when I tell you kind of some of the synchronicities that happened following this, Marietta is a really important part of the story.
1
Uh,
second, real quick. I hate to interrupt you, but I used to
sure.
live in Marietta. That's where I went to
No.
chiropractic school.
Okay.
But I was there a long time ago, from 90 to
So are you
94.
familiar with the Unity Church that is in Marietta?
No, I know where the
Okay.
big chicken is.
I can't say I know where that is, but
Do you know that? Yes.
no, no,
Oh, it's really underwhelming. I'm sorry to interrupt real quick, but in
no.
Marietta is like the big thing is it's a Kentucky Fried Chicken, and it has this giant chicken
I
in the
didn't go
parking
there.
lot. Yeah, and like if you live there, it's like everybody's like that's like a landmark. Like it's a mile past the big chicken, you know.
That's interesting. No,
Yeah.
I was there for such a short period of time that time, and I went back later on, and I was only there for a couple days, so I didn't get a chance to really explore the area either
Hmm.
time I was there.
Yeah.
But if I go back, I will
Sure.
definitely check it out.
Yeah. It's actually kind of it's even though it sounds grand, the big chicken, when you see it, you're like, oh, it's not that big.
But it's good to know. It's important for the locals. So
Right, right. All right.
So yeah, so I was down in Marietta visiting. It's the first time I'd ever been there, and I got the call about my mother. I went right up. She lived in Michigan. I grew up in Michigan, so I returned back home. And over the course of a couple days, she was admitted to the ICU. They determined that she had sepsis, and they weren't really entirely sure what the cause was. But long story short, she had declined to the point to where we had reached the day where we had to make the decision, and I was her next to kin on what we were going to do with her ongoing care, because she had reached the point to where there was nothing else we could do. All of her organs were failing. She was on life support, and um, that day was really hard. I knew the day was coming because she was declining so rapidly, but that morning, when we had to make that decision with the doctors to do her DNR, I was really conflicted because there was just so much pressure on me to make the right decision for her care. And in this weight of pressure, I suddenly started to feel, and it sounds so juxtaposed to the experience, but I started to feel this incredible sense of peace and joy. And I'll never forget it. I was sitting outside of her ICU room that morning, and I was weighing all of these different, considerations for her care. And a chaplain came up and sat down next to me. And I think I actually may have told a little bit of this story when I shared my NDE with you the first time I was on. And the chaplain was helping me make this decision on what to do. And I said, I'm not entirely sure because, one, do I just go forward with the DNR? Do I, fight for every ounce? What do we do here? And on top of that, she's an atheist. So as we progress through this, do we bring on a chaplain? Do we bring somebody bedside? Nonetheless, as I was having this conversation, I was just overwhelmed with this immense just peace and joy that was filling me. And it was so not what the situation called for. And I saw this image flash in my mind's eye. And at first, it was just a flash, and I didn't really pay attention to it. But it was essentially seeing this gigantic pillar of light and then 6 points of orange light around it. Now, as the day progressed, this immense joy continued to fill me. And I began to understand somehow, I don't even know how, that the center pillar of light was my mother. The 6 points of light represented others, and one of those 6 points of orange light was me. And as the day progressed, there was just the sense of like everything was going to happen exactly the way it needed to. The pressure for what my decision needed to be for her care was no longer important. There was this connection, this knowing, this feeling of kind of being with her outside of this physical experience. And the night started to roll on. And as the day progressed, the orange lights, one by one, started to turn off. So there was then 5, and then 4, and then 3, and then 2. And then around midnight, there was just 1, and it was mine. And at midnight that night, that light went out. And not having a clue of what was going on, I had no idea I was having this experience of transition with my mother. About 2:30 in the morning, she passed. And so we weren't sure when it was going to happen, but we knew it was going to happen. And it was as if I saw, again, in my mind's eye. So I want to make sure it's really clear. It's not like I saw this visually happening in a room with my physical eyes, but it was like in my mind's eye, I saw my mother get up, go into the hallway of the hospital, the ICU, and completely, actually, not even in my mom's personality. This is why it makes me laugh. Have you ever seen somebody do like the jitterbug where they're dancing?
Yeah.
That's what I saw her doing down the hallway of this hospital, just filled with so much joy. And my heart was exploding with love and happiness and just this feeling of, I just lost my mother, which is incredibly painful and full of grief and shock. But yet, I really wasn't processing that because I was having this immense, overwhelming love that you can't even explain experience while watching my mother jitterbug down the hospital hallway. And I say all of that because at the time, I was still kind of in this sort of spiritual place where I was exploring spirituality. I had just moved out of really being sort of a very dedicated Christian, which I was in my 20s and my early 30s. And so after my mom had passed, this experience was just rattling me. It was something that I couldn't stop thinking about. I was drawing the picture over and over again of these 6 points of light and looking up different things, trying to see if I could find anybody else that had a similar experience. And it was I should clarify, the 6 points of light formed basically like a hexagon around my mother. And every single point of light went to her, and they all went to each other. So every point was connected to the other points, but also transversed right through the center where my mother's pillar of light was. And I was so captivated by this, so just wanting answers, that I actually went and scheduled an appointment with a medium afterward. And she had explained before I had ever said anything, she said, you realized that you were with your mother when she passed. And I was like, of course I was. I was there with her. And she was like, no, you were really with her. Like you carried kind of with her across. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like it didn't really click for me what she said. It wasn't until years later when I had my NDE in 2019 that when I went to the other side, I recognized that experience of complete and unconditional love was the same joy and peace and just unexplainable love that I was feeling when my mom was passing away. That seemed so inappropriate, that I had when I went to the other side. And I went, oh my gosh, That's what that medium was really talking about. I no, I really did go and have a journey with her to the other side. And the thing that really stuck with me after the experience with my mom was that joy stayed with me for months. It was almost like I had this sort of afterglow that lingered on. And I found myself, I was grieving, but the process of grief looked very different, I think, than I would have went through had I not been filled with so much love and peace and just the sense of knowing that she followed the absolute right path. Everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to happen. All the decisions that were to be made leading up to the end of her life were the right decisions, which for me as her next of kin was really important for me to have that sense of relief. And later on, I was explaining this to a lady that I met in Marietta. Now, I'll pause here, Jeff, because that's the experience. But now here are all the synchronicities
Well,
that
before
happen.
you
So, do
go,
you have any questions before I jump into that?
yeah, I was one thing I wanted to ask is, why do you think you had the ability to have that experience? Have you ever thought about that?
I have probably within the last couple of years been asking myself about that and the NDE because as an NDEer, a lot of we have the opportunity to hear a lot of stories of people, other people who have passed and have come back and have been resuscitated. And one of the common questions that I get when I share my story is, well, I died of a heart attack for 4 minutes and I was resuscitated and I saw nothing. Why didn't I see anything? Why didn't I experience something? And I believe, and I have no way to validate this now because I don't have a mom to ask this. I believe I may have had something happen when I was very, very young, illness wise, that let me step to the other side, if you will. I think something happened early on in my life that opened up a door that I didn't really. Looking back, if I put the whole picture together, it makes me wonder.
Do you see me showing my internet thing? I lost you for a second, but you're back. Am I coming through to you?
Yes, you are coming through. You lagged for me for just a moment. I was watching the live stream on my device. It looked like it was okay though.
All right. All right. So you possibly had some sort of NDE as a
Yeah.
child, which makes sense to me. Um, and I was going to ask, but you kind of basically answered it earlier. And what I was thinking about is, how did you process your mother's transition? Most people grieve, but it sounds like to me that you really didn't grieve. You were still in the afterglow of the experience.
Initially, afterwards, I definitely was. I went through grief, but I feel like my grief may have been just a little less um, jagged, I guess would be a good word, because I had so much love that I was feeling and so much gratitude for the fact that my mom had lived a questionable life. And this is, I think, kind of an important thing.
What do you mean by that?
She made a lot of really bad decisions. She was an alcoholic. She had been in prison. She just, she didn't have an opportunity to make choices in her life that most people would reflect upon and say, that's a good person. Fact that when she crossed over, that she was filled with so much love. And I want to remind everybody again, this is before my NDE and before I knew in my experience that we all go back to this unconditional love. I was still wrestling with this, kind of religious deconstruction and the spirituality. And I was questioning a lot. But that experience told me that it doesn't matter. We can make really horrible decisions in this life. And when we cross over, we're still enveloped in complete and total love.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it seems like the consensus from the majority of the NDEs that I've seen, there's always some outliers, but from the majority, the only judge is ourselves.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So you met a woman in Marietta. This is right after she had transitioned or years later?
So this is years later. So a couple of synchronicities to kind of tie this all together, which is really interesting. When my mom was the evening before my mom passed. So my mom passed in the middle of the night at 2:30. So back up to about 10 p.m. right before that. We had decided to go ahead and ask and call a pastor for a bedside prayer for my mom. She was an atheist. It was really more for me and for the family that was surrounding her. And a lady showed up, a lady pastor, and we had discovered that she was a pastor at a local Unity church in Michigan. And I knew nothing about Unity churches. I wasn't a church goer at the time. For those that don't know, Unity is one of those congregations that focuses on more spiritual practice. They do consider themselves non-denominational as far as I understand, but they really embrace all religious beliefs and they focus more on our consciousness and meditation rather than prayer. They don't focus on any particular deity. It's more like source and universe. So more, I think, encompassing of all beliefs in that respect. What I didn't know, and I found out later, is that she was the pastor at the church that my mom was going to for AA meetings and didn't even know that. So it was very appropriate that she happened to be the one that was there. I went back to Chicago, which is where I lived after my mom had passed, and decided I would look up a Unity church in my area because I was really intrigued with what this pastor had shared with me. And come to find out there was a Unity church. Like I lived here, there's a block and a half, and there's a Unity church right there, a 3-minute walk from my house. But for whatever reason, I never noticed it. I decided to go ahead, go to a service. I went into a service. After the service, the pastor was doing the typical, shaking the hands, and you get to, meet the new people who have come in. And I introduced myself, told a little bit about my story, told him about the lady that had ultimately told me about Unity churches. And he was like, oh yeah, she was my boss over in such and such an area. And so they had known each other for quite some time, which was really interesting. So I went on to talk about the story, and I think about maybe a year after I did the first podcast about my NDE here on yours, an author contacted me and he said, I just am so intrigued by your story. We have a group down here in Marietta, Georgia, that I think would really love to hear your story. Can I connect you with the person who would organize that? Not knowing anything else about it. And the gentleman reached out to me, and he was a pastor at a Unity church in Marietta, Georgia. And so was it last summer? It must have been last summer at this point because I was 23. I went down and I did an entire weekend workshop for the congregation down there. And there was a lady that was in the audience. And she was intrigued by what I was describing because I described a little bit about my near-death experience with my mom, but the focus of that workshop was primarily the NDE. It was later on when I had one-on-one, she had kind of pulled me aside and said, I'm really intrigued. Like, tell me more about what you saw. And so at this point, I still had no idea what to call it. I just said, there's these 6 points of light, and there's center point was this beautiful pillar of white light. And she says, well, you know what that is? That's the flower of life. And she pulls out this image, this beautiful painting she had with her. And she said, I actually brought this today to give you because I felt like this was a gift I wanted you to take home with you. And I said, I feel like I've just come full circle, completely full circle, in that the flower of life, also I believe it's known as Metatron's cube, maybe is also another way to describe that.
Would it be the same thing as fleur de lis, the French flower?
The fleur de lis is that, like, I should probably have printed out a picture or something, but essentially the research that I did afterwards is it goes and stems back to the understanding of sacred geometry and how we are all connected to essentially a soul family, and that soul family that was around my mom was her soul family. But if you were to zoom out, I would be in the center of a soul family. You would be in the center of a soul family. And all of us have these points of light around us that represent a soul family. And that in some way, whether they're here or they're on the other side, are here somehow supporting our life in this physical journey.
Do you think that the rest of the people in her soul family were already on the other side and you're the only one that was here?
I have asked myself that so many times. The only other point of light that I felt I had any intuitive knowing at all of who it would be was my grandfather John, which he had passed. There is absolutely no connection, understanding, knowing with any of the other points of light. So myself, my grandfather John, and then four other points that to this day I don't know. Maybe I have to go back to Marietta to get the rest of the answers.
You never know.
So yeah, that experience coming full circle, I feel like there's just such a depth of connection that we have with certain individuals. And I don't like to use the word soulmate because I think that has different connotations than what this experience felt like. But if we were to consider that we have companions both here and maybe on the other side that continue to support us while we are in this physical life, it feels it resonates that that is the truth of part of our existence here.
Have you had any contact with your mother since she left, like in dreams?
One, that's interesting you asked. I haven't thought about this in so long. Wow. About 6 or 7 months, I want to say, after she passed, I had a very interesting dream. At the time, I don't do it much anymore for whatever reason. I don't know why, but I was doing a lot of astral out of body at night. That's a whole nother episode. We could go through the number of different things that have happened in those journeys. But one night I was in my dream and I woke up in my dream and I walked out of my bedroom completely conscious. But at this point, I knew I was in my dream. And I walked up to my hall closet in my house. I opened it up because I knew my mother was there. I knew she was, for whatever reason, she was in the closet. That has no other connotation other than just the fact that in the dream, that's where she was. And when I opened it, it wasn't her image. It was this like million-sided geometric shape, where almost like, isn't there a game where there's like these multi-side dice that you can
Well, like
play?
in Dungeons
Yes,
and
yes, like
Dragons,
that.
like a
Just like that.
20-sided dice.
But like a million sides. There were so many sides to it. And each one was a some sort of geometric shape. I don't recall what shape it was. I don't know if they were little hexagons or something. I don't know. But each one was a different color. And they were jeweled bright light colors. But then there were several that had no light at all. They were dark, almost like if I were to interpret it, it felt like that those were lifetimes that she hadn't completed yet. But all the other ones that were lit up were the ones that were complete. And I had the sense of like completion when I saw it. And I closed the door because it was like, okay, now I know you're on your journey. And I never had another dream about her again in what's it been, 10, 11, 12 years?
Maybe she reincarnated.
Potentially,
Hmm.
potentially. So yeah, very interesting. I have not thought about that dream in so long.
Now, you had the shared death experience when in 2012?
11,
11. Okay. And then you had your NDE in 2000.
2019.
All right. So let's fast forward to that.
Yeah, so 2019, I had gone in for, I think you mentioned it at the beginning, for a dental procedure. I've told this story so many times, so I won't get into the nuts and bolts of what happened with that. But essentially, during the preparation for the procedure, I had this intense like pressure building up in my body. I went completely unconscious. And the next thing that I saw was I was in the ceiling looking down at my body. And at the time when I was up in the ceiling, I always have to do a disclaimer because I talk about all of these things like they happened one thing after another, but from my perspective and what I experienced, they happened all together. It happened all at the same time. When I was up in the ceiling looking down at my body, the first thing that I said to myself was, what am I doing up here? I didn't say, what am I doing down there? I said, what am I doing up here? And that knowing that I said in my mind, in my mind's eye, unlocked something within me. And I realized in that moment that we are not our physical body. Because if we were our physical body, then whatever I was identifying with wasn't my physical body. It was whatever your soul, your spirit, whatever you want to call it, up in the ceiling that I had consciousness of. That's what I was identifying with. I wasn't identifying with the body that was down in the dental chair.
Let me stop you for one moment.
Yeah.
I don't need to know about what procedure you needed to have done, but was the anesthesia an IV anesthesia, or was it like, they give you some injections in your mouth before you have a procedure done?
It was a combination of like an anti-anxiety type medication that I took beforehand and nitrous oxide.
Nitrous oxide, interesting. Did you just fall asleep and then all of a sudden you were out of your body, or how long was that transition from waking consciousness to outside?
I don't have a sense of how long it was. That's where this kind of unknown time thing that I'm talking about plays an important part because when I was outside of my body, and initially I was still in the dental office, and then I left. And so the time between when I went out of my body and I came back into my body, it could have been a minute, it could have been 2.5 minutes. I don't suspect it was that long, simply because I think the dentist that was there would have done something before if it had been 5, 10, 15 minutes. I mean, I wouldn't have been sitting there that long in preparation.
Were were they out of the room, or were they in the room
No,
trying to revive you when you were
no, the
watching?
dentist was at a table next to me preparing, like setting stuff up
Maybe
was
it's
what I saw him do.
right.
Um, and so when I was looking down at my physical body and I realized that we are absolutely not our bodies, it was like everything opened up. And it's so hard to describe this experience because we don't have anything that relates to it in our physical life that explains what it feels like to go from thinking with our mind to just knowing at a grander scale. But I flipped over in the ceiling and I was really close to the ceiling tiles. I was just inches away. And I remember just this intense fascination and love and interest and awe with all of the details in the ceiling. They were fascinating. They weren't even just fascinating, they were beautiful. And they were literally just ceiling tiles. They were ceiling tiles filled with dust and dirt. Um, and with that, it was like, my eyes closed, a veil came down. I don't know what you want to call it, but I was gone. And when I opened my eyes back up, I was in what I call the void. And this feeling of absolute, complete love and oneness became a part of me. And while I was there, and I won't get into tons of detail because I know I've told this story in pretty pretty grand detail on your channel prior to tonight. But it was just this feeling of, this is who I am. And I found myself connecting to this knowing. And it was as if all the knowing of everything that has ever happened or will ever happen or could ever happen was all a part of me, and I was able to access it. And I found myself not able to ask any questions. Like I found myself being so curious about so many things that I was pulling into my experience. Actually, a better way to put it, I was pulling it in, but I was also expanding into it, would probably be a better way to describe it. And the curiosity of wanting to understand something that I didn't have the knowing of a moment before was what pulled the knowing into being a part of me in that experience. And I realized that there is absolutely no difference between me or I, or whatever you want to identify, the soul, spirit, or consciousness, and this absolute oneness, and that we are all a part of it. And if anybody were to ever not be a part of that loving oneness, then the oneness as a whole could not exist.
Would you say that you became nothing? You did also while you were there. Was it a place of no time and you forgot about Anastasia?
So, the way I like to describe it is, initially, again, it's hard to talk about this in terms of before and after, but when I got into the void and I became part of this greater oneness, it was as if the more curiosities I presented, the more I expanded into this oneness, the less I identified with myself as Anastasia. And it felt to me like there was this moment of knowing that I could go into another experience there in the void where I could essentially relive all of the feelings I had ever had as Anastasia if I wanted to, but I didn't. I didn't have the curiosity about that. My curiosity was more about, I can't even verbalize it. I can't put words to all the things I was curious about, because it was as if the things that I knew in that place were things that we don't know here. I can't even put it in a context of a physical existence, because it was as if I had connected to every single universe and reality that exists all simultaneously in every single soul, millions upon billions upon billions, in all the experiences that had ever happened across all of those without time. Time just simply, it doesn't exist on the other side, not the way we experience it here.
When you came back, did you start to unpack some information that you got while you were there and you had to kind of process it like knowledge or information?
It's it's a huge unpacking. The thing that I talked about previously when I was on your show was, when I came back, it was like I was trying to hold on to grains of sand, where I was trying to bring all of this knowing back with me, but I just simply wasn't able to. And all I wanted to do was to just go back. I didn't have this desire to be back in my physical body. I wanted to go back to wherever that was that I was just at. And I could feel, it was almost like an iris of a camera shutting as I was put back into my body. And I just remember like being able to grab a hold of one knowing that I could consciously hold on to and immediately understand. And that is that our physical bodies are simply just sensory tools collecting information for the soul. That this physical experience is not about learning lessons for a higher soul, because our souls are already complete. That oneness that we are a part of is infinitely and vastly and more incomprehensibly knowing than we could ever have in this physical life. And that this physical life is to be experienced, that the soul wants to have this experience of the physical life. And that what we're doing here isn't about doing right and wrong and good and bad for the sake of adding value to the soul, because the soul is already complete. That this physical life is about opening up to our soul and allowing our soul to be in the driver's seat of this physical experience so that we can add value to the physical experience itself.
Let me ask you this. On the other side, we're complete. We know everything, I'm assuming, is what you're saying. We're complete.
Mm-hmm.
So some people say we come back over and over again because it's a school and we're here to learn something. But to me, it sounds like we don't need to learn anything from what you're saying. We just come here to experience it. And the experience in a way is kind of a learning, but it's really an experience.
The learning that we could talk about is how we can learn to be more soul connected in a physical body. That the generations that have come before us, all of their collective experiences are a part of who you are today and who I am today. And our experiences, especially if we have children, are passed down to them. And through that collective evolution over time, we are essentially opening up the physical body to basically allow the soul to be in the driver's seat. Some people like to call it awakening, to go from being asleep to being awake. I think of reincarnation not as a soul that has to go back and have these experiences over and over again. I think of reincarnation more as there's a pattern that's happened in the physical biology, maybe 4 or 5 generations back. That pattern gets reincarnated into the next generation, into the next generation. And so that pattern is what gets relived until it is broken, or what you may call you're learning from, or you correct. I mean, there's so many different terms you can use from different kind of belief systems, from karma to sin to, forgiveness, things of that nature. But at the end, the reincarnation isn't necessary from a soul perspective. The reincarnation is the physical body evolving. This is how I connect to what I came back with. So I just really want to preface this. I'm not trying to start a whole school of belief here. That our physical bodies will evolve to the point to where the soul can have a direct experience, and that while we're in a physical body, we will also have all of that infinite knowing that is a part of our soul while we're here, because our biology, our brain, our understanding and comprehension will have evolved so greatly that we won't have the barriers to our physical biology and brain to understand that infinite all-knowing oneness that is a part of our soul. Because right now our biology isn't advanced enough to understand it. Everything that I connected to, I can't bring that back because it's too advanced for me to understand.
It'd make your brain explode.
Yeah, I think it really would.
Yeah.
I feel like I brought back a grain of sand of knowing.
Mm-hmm. Well, before I run out of time with you, what are you doing now? You said you
So,
quit your job, or I
yep.
guess you retired, or you quit your job, and you're doing what now?
So we have a wellness studio in the suburbs of Chicago. It's called The Healing Heart, and we do a number of different wellness, energy, holistic practices there, from reflexology to Reiki to sound therapy to meditation. And I work with my team there, but I also do primarily I work with people virtually, because I actually retired out of Chicago and I live in the middle of nowhere country in a whole nother state. So
Wow.
I really went to the extreme with this kind of living a very natural and connected life.
Do you mind sharing
And
what state you moved to?
I don't, but I will say there are more chickens and cows than swimming pools. So
All right. Sounds
rural
like
Midwest.
in the Midwest. Okay, yeah, that's great. And you're liking it?
I love it.
You don't miss
Absolutely love it.
Chicago at all?
Well, I go back so often because my studio is there that I do
Oh,
still get a
okay.
little bit of culture and I can go visit all my favorite restaurants because where I live now, there's none of that.
Right, right. Did you write a book too?
I co-authored a book called Aligned Leaders. My NDE story is in that book. I have been debating the idea of sharing my story in a book and all the kind of the whole journey of everything I've experienced, but I haven't gone down that path yet.
Hmm. All right. Do you have anything else that you're working on that you want people to know about while you're here?
I nothing for me personally. I always feel like when I share these stories, I really want them to stand on their own merit. And, if people find me outside of this and they resonate with it, then that's great. But aside from that, I just really hope that by sharing this, it helps people find more of their who they truly are, which is peace, love, and joy.
Are you still posting on TikTok?
I am. Yeah, I am. So I am at the Heart Shines on TikTok, and our studio is at the Healing Heart Studios on TikTok.
All right, great. Cool. Well, it was awesome catching up with you again. It was great seeing you. I wish you massive success with your new studio.
Thank
And
you.
hey,
It's so
when
great to see you.
likewise, and if you get your book, if you ever decide to publish a book or you got something new, stop by and tell us about it.
I sure will. Thank you so much. It's so good to see you, Jeff.
All right, likewise. You take care.
Bye.
Bye bye. Oh, she's gone. That was fast. She knew how to leave. Usually I have to go over here, push the button, figure out how to help the guest, to take them out of the room. I need to figure out at some point if I can just kind of, I got to program this here, which is, what is it? Streamlabs is how I'm bringing the person in and out. How to just hit one button and then off they go. But usually there's a few steps to take, but she actually left quickly. So that worked perfectly. All right, so my next guest is already here. That is perfect timing, perfect timing. And he is Samuel Chong. So for those of you that are into UFOs, he's here. Let me pull up my notes. I think I have specific notes for him today. Let me make sure that I have those because I got it here. All right, here we go. Got myself all together. And once again, Samuel is a Chinese translator. I think he's in Los Angeles or San Diego. It's been a while since we've spoken. And he's really into this book called the Thiaoouba Prophecy. So let's see what he is up to. We'll play a little music.
Hi.
Samuel,
Yes, hi.
I hear you, but I don't see you.
You don't see, let me change my
You're in the black
view.
void or something. There you are.
I'm here.
All right, great to
Yes.
see you again.
Great to see you
Yeah, it's
again.
been a while.
Yes.
Yes. Are you in Los Angeles or San Diego? I think you're in California, right?
Yes, I'm still in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. Yeah, all right, I remember.
Yes.
Well, great to see you again. Now,
Mhm.
I don't remember how long it was when we made our initial video together. Do you remember? Has it been a couple years?
It'll be 2 years.
2
2 years ago.
years, just like Anastasia.
Yes.
All right. So I probably gained about 70, 80, 90,000 subscribers. And so many of these people tonight may never have even heard of the Thiaoouba Prophecy. So I think it would be best if we start from the beginning. What is that book about?
Okay, sure. The book is actually the author's personal experience of visiting or being taken away by this group of highly advanced ETs to their planet for 9 days and then came back, in which he was told where we came from before, and also what's the meaning of life. It's the reincarnation, who built the Great Pyramid of Egypt, and what happens to the Bermuda Triangle, and also the real dangers on Earth. So he was told a lot of the information given by the ETs, which later I was able to verify to be authentic.
All right, so he was abducted by ETs and taken to their planet, right?
Yes, yes.
Were they like Pleiadians or Arcturians? What kind of ETs? And does he talk about what planet he went to?
They're the Thiaoubans or
Thiaoubans.
Thiaoubans. Yes. So they are 9 or 10 foot tall, blonde, very beautiful looking, very sexy, but they're hermaphrodites, meaning that they have both male and female sexual organs.
Would they be the same thing as what some people call the Nordics? Like there's blonde, well, I don't know about 9 or 10 feet. I think they're about 6 to 8 feet. But does that make sense to you, or are they different?
Yeah. They're definitely Nordic looking, very blonde and beautiful, but they're very tall, like giants, because we have some information about the giants as recorded in the ancient texts. I think there may be a connection over there.
Wow. All right. So how did they first connect with him? How did they find him? How did they choose him and decide to take him to their planet?
It happened in 1987. So the author, Michel Desmarquet, woke up in the middle of the night. He didn't know why, but he wrote a note to his wife saying that there is absolutely no need to worry about him and he will be gone for about 10 days or so. And then he walked outside of his house. He was lifted up to the middle of the air where he saw this beautiful, gigantic ET being telling him that they're going to take a trip together. He's going to enjoy that. And in the later part of the book, it says the reasons why he was chosen. That's because first, he's a man of action. And second, he is able to record and document everything that he personally witnessed, experienced, and also write a book. And third is the most important reason is that he had 80 past lives already. So only he can survive for 90 days on our planet, probably because of the different vibrations or other reasons. So he was chosen.
Before we dig deeper in his story, why does this book resonate with you so much? Why do you love this book?
I work with a lot of lawyers and doctors. I need proof and also specific verifiable facts. And this book contains this information that I was later able to investigate and do additional research. The book tells a lot of interesting details that are proven by modern science. For example, it talks about the antibacterial effect of blue light, because when Michel entered into their spacecraft, they disinfected him using blue light. And Harvard Medical School had a research study indicating that blue light, certain wavelengths of blue light do have antibacterial, antiviral effects. There are other facts such as, remember, there's a tomb of Jesus in Shingo Village, Japan. The book was written in 1993, actually got published in 1983, before the age of the internet. And Michel never traveled to Japan, but the book describes in details the tomb of Jesus in Japan, that people can still do a lot of research and go visit.
You're saying the tomb of Jesus?
Yes, the tomb of Jesus in Japan. And people want to connect the stories, but the book gives all the explanations why some people say that Jesus went to India, and why there's a tomb of Jesus in Japan, and why Christ resurrected on the cross after 3 days.
Why did he go to Japan?
Well, there are actually two beings. One is actually Jesus, the one who was born from Virgin Mary, from the embryo put into the uterus of Virgin Mary by the ETs. The young Jesus was highly spiritual, but he wasn't able to perform miracles. Because when the astral body goes into the embryo, it has to pass through what the ancient Nagas call the river of oblivion, forgetting all the knowledge to perform miracles. So that Jesus, even though he was highly spiritual, having a very profound conversation with the teachers of the temple, he couldn't perform miracles. So he traveled to India and went to Japan and died over there. Christ, on the other hand, is actually an ET who took on the body of Jesus made by them. So that means they made another body that resembled the appearance of Jesus and then entered into that body so that he was able to remember all the knowledge to perform miracles. So this is why when you see when Christ began preaching, when he met his mother, he didn't call his mother mother, he called his mother woman, because he wanted to show that he was someone different from Jesus that went to Japan. And the reason they did that was because people in the past, as well as people nowadays, they're highly skeptical. Unless someone can perform miracles, the teachings will not be believed. So they had to show that Christ was able to perform all the miracles so that his teachings of spirituality and love and the concept of reincarnation would be believed by the people at that time. But for some reason, the concept of reincarnation was later removed from the Bible by the Catholic Church Council meetings.
Now, you also mentioned the pyramids earlier, I believe, right?
Yes, I did.
What does he say about them?
We had actually two great resets in the human history of mankind on Earth. So we had ancient civilizations that had far more advanced technologies than what we have now. So back 17,000 years ago, there was a very learned and wise person called Thoth, what some people would call the Egyptian god. But he was just a regular person, but he had great knowledge of anti-gravity and also using a supersonic vibratory system to cut the huge stones in a very precise manner. So this is how he built the Great Pyramid, using that as an energy center to concentrate or to capture cosmic and terrestrial energies, so that the users, the great pharaohs of Egypt, were able to communicate to people living on different planets by projecting their thoughts from the top of the pyramid into other worlds. And the Great Pyramid was also used to make rain. And Thoth actually used only 9 years to build the Great Pyramid.
Wow. So if we go back to Jesus for a moment, or there were two Jesuses, right? One that was from Mary, and then one of them, did they basically clone Jesus's body?
They are highly advanced beings, so they're able to make another body that resembled the appearance of the body of Jesus. So they're actually able to make an adult human being in 24 hours. So that's how they did that. And then, so Christ actually came from the desert after everything happened. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a little confused on the timeline. Were they both created at the same time, or when was the Christ created?
Well, they were not created at the same time. Christ was created after Jesus became an adult at the age of 28 or 29 years old, when he was actually not in the Middle East anymore. He traveled actually to India. So that's actually when Christ came into the picture. He actually remembered his mission. What he was going to do was to actually to teach and preach about spirituality, because the Hebrews were under the rulings of the Roman Empire, and they were suppressing the spiritual development of the Hebrews. So they were the chosen people by the Thiaoubans. So this is actually explains why some people say that Jesus went to India.
Does the book talk about what happens to people after they die?
Yes, there is reincarnation. What happens is that when a person dies, he or she would give up his physical body, and then the astral body would leave the physical body. To be more exact and to be more thorough, it's actually the 81% of electrons of the astral body would go into the higher self after 3 days. And this is why Christ resurrected 3 days after he was crucified on the cross. And this is why the Tibetans have a custom that the corpse of the dead are not to be touched for 3 days. So 81% of electrons of the astral body go into the higher self. The other 19% of the electrons remain in nature until they're recycled or until a person reincarnates. So this is why some people say that they can see ghosts. Ghosts are actually the remaining 19% of the electrons that some people can see. And because ghosts have like electrons, because electrons have static forces, they resemble the appearance of the people who just passed away. And also because electrons have memories, they frequently haunt the places they loved or hated. So when a person passes, the person goes through what we would call life reveal process, like revealing everything that he did in his past life. It's like a holographic film showing everything that happened. He or she would be able to feel the pains or happiness or sufferings of the people they did certain acts onto. For example, if I hit a person, I would be able to feel the pain suffered by the other person. So it's like I would be able to evaluate how I did in the lifetime and then determine what kind of spiritual lessons I need to learn in the next lifetime when I reincarnate.
Did the ETs ever show him the future? And if so, does he reveal it in your book, or has he revealed it to you personally?
The book talks about the critical moment we are in right now. So we are in a very critical moment of time. And if we don't change how we live, then we are going to be heading a catastrophe. So a lot of people say that nuclear war or atomic bombs are actually very dangerous to people on Earth. They are dangerous. But according to the ETs from Thiaoouba, when we die of a nuclear war, we would simply just reincarnate. So that doesn't really matter as much as how to live more a spiritual life. Because you know, the ways how people live nowadays are very materialistic. So they're saying that technology will take people more into the materialistic ways of life, which really dangerous. We should use technology to improve our spirituality. If we don't change, we're going to be heading a catastrophe. And there are 4 or 5 real dangers on Earth. Number 1 being money. Number 2, politics or politicians. Number 3, journalists and drugs. Number 4, religions. So they're warning us that we need to change how we live nowadays. And otherwise, the future is going to be catastrophic.
What do you mean by that? Like, what would be the outcome if something bad happened?
Well, when people read the Bible, they're going to see the 2 cities, Sodom and Gomorrah, being destroyed by or gods or Jehovah's. If we don't change, then we may be facing the same consequences. And also, in terms of the timing, I would use the analogy of Enoch and Noah, because Noah is the great-grandson of Enoch. Enoch was taken away by gods or the Jehovah's. When the author Michel Desmarquet read the book of Enoch, he found a lot of similar descriptions or resemblance of what he personally experienced versus what the book of Enoch describes. One scholar says that 40 or 60 years after, Noah was told to build an ark after Enoch was taken away. So we are actually pretty close to the timeline. So this is why it's very important for us to take action.
Now, you were so moved after reading this book, you decided to travel to, I'm not sure, Vietnam or somewhere to actually meet the author, right?
Yes, in Vietnam, yes.
Oh, what was it like when you met him? How did he respond to you?
You know, how I went to Vietnam was that I just decided to go there without knowing his exact address. I just grabbed a photo taken by a tourist showing the author Michel Desmarquet's bungalow. And I flew to Vietnam without knowing what was going to happen. And I showed that the bungalow photo of bungalow to the local taxi driver. and the taxi driver took me there after the second try. Michel Desmarquet was having an afternoon nap. After he saw me, he was not very happy because he was a very private person. He was very annoyed at my questions about the book. He just asked me to read the book a few more times and to read the book a few more times before asking him questions. So until I was able to help him to get in touch with a Chinese publisher to follow up with the publishing process, he was kind of aloof to me.
So did you stay in Vietnam and read the book a few times and then go back and ask questions, or did you keep in contact with him via the internet?
Well, I didn't have time to read the book a few more times in Vietnam, so I kind of catered to his hobbies. I played chess with him, and I lost. He was a very good chess player, and I tried to sneak in a few questions while we were playing chess, but he still kind of refused to answer my questions because in the postscript of the book, he says there are far more incredible things that he was not allowed to write in the book because we were far from understanding them. So he refused to tell me what he wasn't allowed to write about. So I kept in touch with him. Actually, the first time I spent about 5 days with him in Vietnam, and then I helped him to get a book published in China and Taiwan. And then he invited me to visit him the second time, in which he told me that he was able to tell me the one thing that he wasn't allowed to write in the book. And that's actually my motivation to spread the messages contained in the book.
While being with him, did he seem different than the rest of us? Was there something about him that you felt like he was telling the truth and you felt like he'd been on this other planet?
Well, he was definitely a unique person with a very cynical attitude. But that is very typical of a Frenchman. He was a French Australian. So in that sense, he was like a very typical Frenchman, but he was smoking a lot and he was drinking a lot, even though he had, if you read the book, you're going to know he had a lot of past life experiences or tragedies because of his drinking issues. So in that sense, he was a regular person, but he was always looking to leave Earth because to him, the planet Thiaoouba, where he visited for 9 days, was just like a paradise. Everything was so perfect. And he felt great love and compassion from the Thiaoubans. He wanted to go back to their planet and to live there forever. So he was looking forward for them to take him away or maybe leave Earth. That's what I felt for the 2 meetings that I had with him.
Are you okay with taking questions from the audience?
Yes, definitely.
All right. One person, Joey B, is asking, what is the one thing that we weren't allowed to know?
Well, I actually wrote an article about it, which is the second coming of Jesus Christ and what we need to do to be prepared. So that article contains the clues and also hints that I was able to review as much as possible. But the information he told me was very, very specific. It's not just like general information, oh, we're going to have a very interesting life in the future, or someone is going to come and visit us or something like that. It's very specific information. It's just like the information contained in the book, very specific and verifiable. So that information he told me is something that I cannot disclose because he told me that how the ETs told him and asked me not to disclose. But I revealed as much as possible in my article.
Well, can you tell us whether he's already back or not?
I mean, he passed away in 2018, and he already left Earth, having his another journey. So I think there's nothing to be said about it. We should remember that in one of the ancient civilizations we had on Earth, especially specifically the Lemurian civilization, the continent was on the Pacific Ocean. when the great king of Lemuria died, people celebrated because people had the knowledge that he contributed a great deal to the people on Lemuria, and then he would have a great leap of his spiritual development, and that is one thing to be celebrated. So they celebrated his death.
All right, here's a couple more questions. One quickly. Kimberly wants to know, where can we find your article?
Directly, if people go to my website, chinasona.org, and then search the title of the article, The Second Coming of Jesus Christ, they're able to find the article.
You said samuelchong.org?
Chinasona.org.
China what?
Chinasona, SONA.org.
Chinasona.org, okay.
Yes.
All right, here's another one from Jay Lizard. Does Samuel know who he was in previous lifetimes?
I don't know. I tried a few times to regress myself through hypnosis, but I didn't go in there. I'm very curious to find out who I was in my past lives. I don't know.
What got you interested in the book in the first place? Like, did you already read UFO books, or did you have an experience yourself?
When I was young, I grew up in China, and when I was young, there were UFO magazines in China in the 1980s. I thought if the ETs could come and visit us, they must have advanced technology and knowledge. We can just learn from them so that we can progress at a much faster pace. So it's always in my subconscious mind to read books written by ET contactees and to learn about the information passed by the ETs that have advanced civilizations. But I read so many books written by ET contactees, but those books contained only general information or general concepts. This book, Thiaoouba Prophecy, is so different. It contains a lot of specific, verifiable facts that I was really shocked at.
Just to let everybody know, if you have a question for Samuel, try to type it in all caps. It'll be easier for me to locate. Can you tell us some more about those, or give us some more examples of those verifiable facts?
Yes, besides the effects, the antibacterial effects of yellow light and blue light, besides the effects of the tomb of Jesus in Shingo Village, Japan, there are also other facts. For example, the description of Project Westward, in which the US government sent out hundreds of millions of copper needles into space in the 1960s to improve the telecommunication signals, because they believed that the signals would bounce back from the copper needles. And then the ETs from Thiaoouba say that they collected the needles because they were harmful to the people on Earth. So I verified the information, and there is indeed Project Westward in the 1960s, and indeed the 2 launches failed. The needles disappeared. So that's the very specific, verifiable information. Another information was that during World War II, they prevented Germany from being the first country to develop the atomic bomb. And I did some research. There was a German doctor called Dr. Heisenberg. He was far more advanced in the research and development of atomic bomb than the American scientist. But for some strange reason, he made a very stupid mistake, and his report was read by Hitler, making Hitler believe that Germany didn't have enough natural resources for plutonium to make the bomb. So Hitler gave up the plan because of the report that he wrote. And so that resulted in the US government being able to develop the bomb earlier than Germany, ending World War II much earlier than it would have been otherwise.
All right, here's another question. I believe you already said that the ETs made pyramids, but what about the Great Wall of China or the moon?
First, the ETs didn't make the Pyramid of Egypt. It's the Thoth from Atlantis that made the Great Pyramid of Egypt. The Great Wall of China was actually built by the Chinese. So if you there's no comparison between the Great Wall of China versus the Great Pyramid of Egypt. people can build the Great Walls of China without any problem because they can just lift the stones. The stones are kind of small in size. But even with modern technology, we cannot lift the huge stones that were used to build the Great Pyramid of Egypt. Actually, the statues on Easter Island were actually built using the same technologies, but built by the people on Lemuria. And actually, Lemuria sunk into the ocean almost overnight, about 14,500 years ago. That's what happened.
All right. Let me see. I'm pretty sure. Um, Here's one. Do ETs themselves ever have a near-death experience?
It depends on what kind of ETs we're talking about. There are many different species or races of ETs in our Milky Way galaxy. We are kind of like low level around Category 1 planets. The ETs from Thiaoouba, they live on Category 9 planets, so they never die. They never age. They can regenerate their body tissues and cells. So they're forever looking like in their 30s. But if you're talking about ETs from, for example, Category 3 planet, they're able to live longer, for example, like 1,000 years old. But they die afterwards. So this is why when you read the Old Testament of the Bible, you see people in the past lived for 800 years or 900 years, because the ancient Hebrews, believe it or not, came from a Category 3 planet. So that's why they were able to live a longer life.
Okay. When do you think the official first contact will occur?
Well, if you're talking about the official government, the congressional hearings, if people are following the news, indicate that there are crashed UFOs or UAPs that the government retrieved through the testimonies of David Grush. And it's already made to the public. And I think with more disclosure going on, people are going to become more aware of the information and the facts. But one thing is that the ETs that the government was in contact with, they're not that far advanced because their spacecraft crashed. The ETs from Thiaoouba in the book Thiaoouba Prophecy are highly advanced, so highly advanced that their spacecraft would never crash on Earth. So this is why I would encourage people to learn from the best, learn from the ETs from Thiaoouba, and learn from the masters.
All right. Have you ever had any spiritual or supernatural experience, like an out-of-body experience or contact with your own guides or something?
I had some lucid dreams when I was young, believing that I would be able to spread the messages of spirituality very easily to the people on Earth. But
What?
now it seems that I still have to navigate the system. Um, in my mind, in my dreams, I it's like life goes on different cycles. My astral body would go and move up the ladder and join and rejoin with the Great Spirit. So that's a kind of unique experience that I had.
Why do you think this book is so popular in China and Taiwan?
It's because China, for two different reasons, for China and Taiwan. For China, there's a very strong censorship in the kind of book that can be published. They don't allow anything spiritual to be published in China. So the book was published as a science fiction, but it has a lot of very interesting content. It actually fills the vacuum of the people's needs in China, seeking for spiritual knowledge that is also grounded. For Taiwan, it's a different story. People in Taiwan are more open to kind of ETs and spiritual development. So with internet influencers talking about the book voluntarily, people learn about the book and started to become interested.
Would you say that you really don't see very many Buddhists or Shaolin in China? They kind of are non-existent at this point.
Um, well, there are Buddhists and Shaolin masters or Kung Fu masters in China. But if you really go into the Shaolin temples or the Buddhist temples in China, you're going to see that most of them are very materialized. I mean, they want your donations and they want the people to worship them, and also people driving luxurious cars go and visit them, hoping that they can get some kind of good fortune, good luck, just by making certain donations. So it's very different from what the originally Buddha taught.
All right, here's another question. Will a Thiaouban ever come back to take another Earthling to their planet for a similar experience?
Not in the next few decades, because they did that to Enoch, they did that to Michel Desmarquet, and I think the book Thiaoouba Prophecy is the ultimate warnings to the people on Earth. We have to take their warnings very seriously. Otherwise, I think is a very catastrophic future.
Do the Thiaoubans ever mention other ETs like the reptilians or Arcturians or anybody else?
Well, there are at least 147 different ETs in our Milky Way galaxy. Michel Desmarquet, after he landed on Thiaoouba, before he was about to come back to Earth, he was shown the different corpses of the 147 ETs floating in a golden doko, which is a dome-shaped structure. And he actually met one of the live ETs on Thiaoouba, telling him that they're just observers, and they don't intervene with anything that happens on Earth because that's not their role. And actually, they don't envy the lives on Earth because we are still having a lot of wars or conflicts amongst ourselves. And Michel Desmarquet wasn't really happy after hearing that. So it doesn't really mention about reptilians. And actually, I have personal doubts about reptilians because I don't see any specific verifiable facts or proofs on the reptilians. But I do believe there are other ETs that are just observers, just watching over us.
A lot of people talk about the Galactic Federation being out there. Do they mention anything about that?
No, and I would again to seek for a specific verifiable proof on the Galactic Federation. But I do believe that there are different categories of ET beings, and I do think that we need to really learn from the best, and also to struggle ourselves through the process of improving our spirituality, and not to rely on the helps from the Galactic Federation or the ETs, because only through the learning process on our own we can improve our spirituality. It's just like, give you an example. It's just like if you're a parent or father trying to teach your daughter a mathematical problem, you wouldn't just give her the answer directly. You would tell her or how to solve the problem so that she can solve the problem on her own. Similarly, we have to learn how to solve the problems that we face nowadays, so that we can learn from the process. And also another story would be biologist in Mexico sees a butterfly trying to come out of a cocoon, struggling trying to come out. Being a very compassionate biologist, he opened the cocoon up so that the butterfly can come out. The butterfly did come out, but the butterfly couldn't fly because it actually needed the struggling process in order to be able to fly. So similarly, we people on Earth have to go through the same struggling process in order to survive on Earth for the long term.
All right. Do the Thiaoubans have any general advice for humanity? Besides, treating the world better before we destroy it.
Follow the teachings of Christ. Learn to be humble, learn to love one another, learn to be compassionate, learn to be seekers of knowledge, and learn to look inside for answers. Actually, one of the most important sentences in the Bible is the kingdom of God is within you. We should respond to the challenges that we face in life by looking inside for answers. And because what we have inside of ourselves is what connects to the Creator or God through our higher self. We should also have the knowledge that there are groups of people or financiers that are running everything behind the scenes. And if people just think about the Republicans fighting against the Democrats, I would encourage them to look behind everything, to look behind the scenes. There's a group of people that manipulates the puppets on the stage, and both the Republicans and the Democrats are on their payroll. And this is why I'm going to Germany next month to meet members.
So how did you get in connection with the people from the Illuminati? And how are they able to accept you to infiltrate or, become a part of their group?
The book Thiaoouba Prophecy talks about the human energy fields or auras, telling us that if you're able to see the colors of auras, you're able to predict physical illness of a person before the physical symptoms manifest. And also we are also able to tell if a person is lying or not. So selecting the right politician will be a no-brainer if you can see the colors of auras. So I was looking for information on how to develop the ability to see auras. So I found this message or a forum that talks about a book titled 334 Lies. It was written in German language, and it tells people how the author of that book was able to develop the ability to see the colors of auras. So I had to check that book out. I don't speak German myself, so I used a tool to translate the book from German to English. And it turned out that after I did some research, there's a connection of the author of the book to the secret society of the Illuminati, because the author was actually the highest degree chair of the Illuminati. That's how I made the connection. And I contacted the copyright holder, telling him that I already translated the book into English and see if they were interested in having it published. And they said yes. So that's the communication. And and they invited me to join them. And I was a little bit afraid in the very beginning. But after seeing so many conflicts and wars happening around the world, I decided that it's time to be courageous. And I'm willing to sacrifice myself of being exposed and to meet them in Germany.
What was the title of that book again?
It's called 334 Lies, Lies.
334 Lies. And you've already translated it into English?
Yes, it's in English and it's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon. Wow.
The reason...
So did you learn the ability? Can you see people's auras after reading that book?
It requires a lot of meditation and practice. Now I'm able to see some of the colors, but not quite fully yet. But I have to warn people, the book is really graphic and disturbing because it describes the rituals that they use to obtain psychic abilities. It's not for the faint of the heart. I have to warn people. Yeah.
All right. Let's see if there's any more questions here. Well, the Thiaoouba Prophecy, it is available on Amazon, or do we have to get it from a website?
It's available on Amazon. It's also on Audible. So if people want to listen to the book, it's read by a very good British narrator.
Now, were the Thiaoubans involved with any other historical religious figures besides Jesus? like Buddha or anyone else?
Moses, yes.
What did they do with Moses?
They helped Moses in the process of Exodus by parting the Sea of Reeds, not the Red Sea, but the Sea of Reeds, using a force field. They also gave manas to the Hebrews to eat so that they could survive during their journey. They gave the highest praise to the Buddha because Buddha was an earthling, but at the end he had enlightenment or self-realization. So throughout the book, it actually gave the highest praise to the Buddha. And then afterwards, it will be Dr. Martin Luther King and Gandhi in India. And it also mentioned about Napoleon. And speaking of Napoleon, they illustrated that violence never works. Violence never helps because Napoleon and Hitler used violence to conquer vast territory of land, but the empire failed because they used violence. So they preach about the nonviolent resistance to against the tyrannies in the world.
Right? Well, I think we've covered a lot of this book today. Do you have any other books that you are interested in, or this is the only one for you? Like this knowledge is it for you. You know what I mean?
I mean, the book Thiaoouba Prophecy is actually the best book that I ever read. Reading the book has been my best investment because it really has a lot of it's really eye-opening and also helped me to develop my business and also my spiritual life. The other book, 334 Lies, it's also good, but it's also very disturbing. I would also recommend people to read books written by Barbara Brennan and books written by some of the other spiritual masters, like the Buddha or actually the New Testaments of the Bible as well. And there are many interesting books out there, and I suggest people to be a learner and be seekers of knowledge.
All right. You may have already shared this because I've asked you, but I'll just ask again. This is a question from the chat. Can you please share the main message for humanity from the book?
The main message is that technology should be used to improve the spiritual development of the people and not to be used to enslave people in a more materialistic world, which is temporary. And we should be learners and seekers of knowledge because the real dangers of Earth lie with money, politicians, journalists, and drugs and religions. And when we have challenges in life, we should look inside for answers, for the kingdom of God is within you.
One thing that it sounded like earlier that you or they wanted people to follow Jesus, but then you're now saying that the problem is with religions.
Yes. So people should follow the teachings of Christ because Christ came here not to establish a religion. He came here meant to destroy the pagan rituals or beliefs of the people at that time. Christ never mentioned about establishing a church or religion. It's the people who later decided to establish organized religions. People should be spiritual, should follow the teachings of Christ, but not religious. And this is the issue with organized religion. They tend to follow or serve their own purpose. They tend to actually the book is so specific. It named the 4 Catholic Church Council meetings that intentionally distorted the original ancient scriptures of the Bible. So organized religions are actually a curse on earth for the people on earth. And we all know that the Catholic Church is probably one of the wealthiest organizations on earth. And they should do better.
So do they tell you how to follow the teachings of Christ? Like, for example, do they want you to do what Thomas Jefferson did and only read the parts of the Bible where Jesus is speaking?
Exactly right. Yeah, follow Thomas Jefferson's advice and just read what Christ said or Jesus said in the Bible.
All right. Well, it was great having you again. Do you have anything else, or is there anything else that you're working on that you want people to know about?
So I'm going to Germany in October next month, and I'm actually going to become a public speaker. So if you have events, if you like to learn more about the secrets kept by the different industries or by the organized religions, I'll be glad to speak in your events. And also I'm working on a book also titled Secrets Kept.
There's a good question here from the chat. Why don't the ETs give us spiritual technology?
Well, just like what they mentioned in the book, if you develop the technology on your own, you're going to learn more from the process. If they just give you like or a camera or something that helps you to improve the technology, it's just like giving the answers of a calculus problem and without giving you the ways how to solve it. So you wouldn't learn much. So they are encouraging us to learn from the process, through the process.
All right. If people want to talk to you more about this or ask you questions, are you open to that?
Yes, I'm open to that. They can find me on Facebook.
On Facebook under Samuel Chong?
Yes, they can also find me on YouTube as well.
And YouTube as well. All right. Well, before we finish up here, Samuel, can you leave us with a last positive message?
The past is fixed, but the future is changeable. It really depends on collective consciousness and concerted actions. What the Illuminati members afraid the most is the collective actions of the people, because no matter how strong their psychic abilities are, when people meditate together, having a same goal, they cannot overpower the power of the people. So we should act together. It has to be international effort, and have a strike if you really want to change something, but it has to be done through nonviolent resistance.
Well, Samuel, thanks for hanging out with us again. It's great seeing you. And maybe after you get back from your meeting in Germany with the Illuminati, you can share what you learned over there. I think that would be fascinating.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
All right. Great seeing you again. Have a great rest of your weekend, Samuel.
Same to you.
All right. Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Oh, he's already gone too. And a big round of applause for Samuel. All right. That was great. That was really great. So, once again, well, Mika wants to make an appearance. We've been doing our Halloween decorating today. And she got her Halloween costume. She's got her Halloween costume on. I'm not sure what you would say that she is. It's not a specific costume, but she has her Halloween dress on, and she wanted to show you guys what, she might, if she decides to go trick-or-treating this year, what she wants to wear. Let me turn that down. It's probably a little too loud. So yeah, so that's Mika's Halloween costume. It's a month out, but if you're gonna put up Halloween decorations, I guess now's a good time so they can they can be there for a month. Tonight was a great show. It was great to be back with you guys live again. It was busy, so that's awesome. And we'll be back next Saturday night. This week, I think I have a really busy week coming up, and who I have scheduled. Let's see if I can tell you about this week. I have an NDE to record on Monday. On Tuesday, I have him scheduled as David Icke. He's kind of like a metaphysical, supernatural icon, so it's going to be amazing to talk to him. I have, let's see, I'm going to be meeting with, on Thursday, Tom Massari. And Tom Massari, let me get back to you guys here. Tom Massari is the channeler. He's like the grandfather of channelers, and he is the channeler who taught Daryl Anka, the channeler of Bashar. He's his teacher, so he's going to be with me, and he's going to be channeling. And I think that'll be real fascinating. And if you guys didn't see it the other night, I posted the video of probably one of the best channelers the best, I don't know, I put her down as Britain's best channeler. But it was an amazing show that we had the other day, and with Elaine Thorpe, I put her down as Britain's best channeler. But if you watch it, she's a female, but she's channeling a male, and when you hear her and see her channeling, it's really remarkable. It's amazing. And I've been in talks with Elaine about coming back and channeling for you guys. So if you saw that and you want to be with her, and I think she's up for it, and she will come and she'll let you guys ask questions. But it was amazing. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend that you see that video. Anyways, who else is coming up? Just I have some other people about different topics, but it should be pretty busy this week. All right, well, on that note, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. And did you write them down? A lot of you gave super thanks tonight, and I want to say thank you guys so much. I don't know if I still have access to it. I know Orville Nation was one of them. Gosh, and the chat doesn't go back that far for some reason. It's not showing him in the chat. Does it show it on your side? He doesn't see it either. But to all of you guys who made a donation and gave us a super thanks, thank you so much. We really appreciate you, and we really appreciate your generosity. And that's about it. I mean, we had a great show tonight. It was a busy show, and I look forward to seeing you guys again next week. And I guess that's about it. So thank you guys. God bless you. We love you, and good night.